So this is a video all about my top 10 favourite artists this time. This is only solo artists and not including bands. Although it may have people who are in other bands. I think that works. There aren't really any rules to this one. There are a couple in the top 10 as well that again I don't have physical representation for, but I'll still talk about them. One of them doesn't really even do physical media and CD at least. They only do vinyl, and I don't collect vinyl, so I don't have any of his music. But we'll get into him shortly. Firstly, we'll go through some of the honourable mentions, as we did in the last video, and again, less physical copies to show. But a couple of the honourable mentions are Brian Eno. Lots of wonderful ambient records from him. I know he's in a band, I forget the name of his band though. I want to see what that's like as well. But yeah, he's got great albums. Apollo, Another Green World, Music for Airports is another one that's great. So yeah, Brian Eno was definitely at least an honourable mention. If not, it could even sneak into the top 10 on another day. Phil Collins. I think Phil Collins is vastly underrated. I thought I had No Jacket Required, but apparently I don't. I can't seem to find it at the moment, so... but yeah, I really enjoy that. I know a lot of people see it as like the epitome of everything wrong with the 80s, but I love the 80s, so that's not really a problem for me. I think that's another great album. And another great artist in Phil Collins. Obviously was a part of Genesis as well. Not listened to the early parts of Genesis, I've only heard Invisible Touch by them, but that's another band to go through in another day. Another honourable mention, we'll get into the physicals now, is Scott Walker. I'm not entirely sure how I found Scott Walker. Probably through Rate Your Music, I would imagine. But it's like Baroque pop, I think it is. It's quite sort of melodramatic, but I think all the songs are really wonderful on here. Scott Walker's got a fantastic voice that really works for the style here as well. But yeah, not a bad song on any of his albums that I've heard anyway. Scott 4 and Scott 3 so far. Still to listen to more, but we'll get to that another time, I'm sure. And another one, which this might be slightly unexpected considering how old this is, but it's Hank Williams. Now this is 2 CDs, it's his greatest hits. And although I can understand why people would be like, oh, it's like it doesn't hold up today. It's it's repetitive. It's the same sort of formula a lot of the time. But I think there's some sort of novelty to the way that these songs were recorded because of how long ago they were. It's sort of like when you go back and listen to 50s and 60s music, they all tend to follow formulas, and all music is sort of formulaic in some way. Unless it's like ambience and then it's sort of freeform and sort of, goes in for, 20 minutes and it's like the same thing over and over. I think those kind of records are good to sleep to though. In a good way though, not a bad way. With these songs though, I think they're perfectly performed, even if they're very old. There's a certain charm to it. It's like an old video game. I don't think the nature of the recording is a downside of these songs, and I really, really enjoy it. So Hank Williams is definitely up there for me. But yeah, that's all for the honourable mentions. Now we will get into the top 10 yet again. So number 10 is going to go to the Icelandic singer Björk. I really like this album, but the album that got it all started for me was Homogenic. It's practically perfect except for one song, Pluto, where she sort of wails in the song a bit, and it's a bit excruciating to listen to, in my opinion. But outside that, again, there's songs on this album particularly. There's Venus as a Boy, which it says in the sticker here. Human Behaviour. Um, she's just a fantastic singer. I've listened to the Sugar Cubes as well, which was the band that she was a part of when she was younger in the late 80s. And even that's good as well. It's not quite as good as her solo stuff, in my opinion. I think the style, although it's like sort of post-punk, which I love, there's another singer that sort of, he's not the best singer, shall we say, but he juxtaposes Bjork's style, I think. Like, they're vastly different, so it works really well in that way. Hearing them sort of bounce off each other. And it just sounds like they had a lot of fun on that album as well, but Bjork's sort of mad artistic style is really fascinating to me. This is probably the most basic album cover. I mean, if you look at Homogenic, she looks like some sort of alien. And then a lot of her other album covers, she's got all sorts of strange costumes on. I'm pretty sure there was a place that she went to, and she was wearing like a goose costume or something like that. Like, she's just fascinating to listen to, and watch. The next two are a couple of bands, or artists, I should say. I keep making that mistake. That I don't have physical copies for. Number 9 goes to Ben Stafford. Now, he's definitely the least well known out of everybody that I'm going to mention here, by quite a long shot, I would say. But to describe his music, he's like a modern English folk singer that has his music on Spotify. I don't know if he has it anywhere else at the moment. I'll need to have a look. He's got some of his songs on YouTube, I know that much, but I don't know if he has it on anywhere like Bandcamp or Apple Music or something like that. I haven't looked. But I've really, really been enjoying his music. He has 3 albums and a couple of EPs. And as a lover of folk music, I think folk music's nowhere near as popular as it used to be. Not in the sort of traditional style, at least in my opinion. And I think he has an interesting take on that style, in my opinion. So if there's anybody that I would say to listen to out of this list that you've not heard, because he's probably the smallest out of them all, he would be the one that I would definitely point you towards. And number 8 is Billy Joel. Again, don't have any representation for this. But The Stranger is absolutely incredible. Obviously, I think the song that got me into him was Piano Man. My brother showed me Piano Man years ago, and a few years later I decided I would go deeper into discography and listen to The Stranger and Piano Man the album. So I want to listen to things like Turnstiles as well, and some of his later output. But he's another wonderful pianist, as well as musician. I think he has a really good grip on his sort of songwriting and pop. It's always very catchy, and even the songs that aren't quite as catchy, they're still very memorable. It just has it. I don't know what it is, because I'm not smart enough to really figure out what that is, but it has something that's really special to his songwriting that takes it from just being basic pop to just really incredible pop. Number 7 is Neil Young. I've heard quite a few of Neil Young's albums now. This is still my favourite though. Again, my brother told me about Neil Young. Quite a lot of these are like that. A lot of the music that I've got into have been through family. But Neil Young, uh, he does a fantastic job um, of fusing folk rock and sort of country rock together. And he has a very, very unique voice for a vocalist. Some of his songs are very heart wrenching. On this album and The Harvest, I think the thing that really cemented Neil Young as one of my favourites though is he has a live version in the 70s of Old Man. Now, I quite like that song on the album, but the live version transforms it completely. It's just a man and his guitar singing, and he has this ability to hit notes that you wouldn't dream of hitting. He just knows how to do it. Extremely talented guy. I'm pretty sad that his music got took off Spotify and all that, but it gives me more of a reason to collect all of his albums physically. Which is, I mean, that's the goal really, to get all of the albums that are important to me, on the way up. Number 6 goes to Sir Paul McCartney. Obviously, he's one of the Beatles, and you know I love the Beatles. If you've seen my top 10 bands video, if not, then I'll leave a link to that. I'll leave one of the wee clicky things in the corner as well. It's probably that corner actually, because I'm pretty sure this gets mirrored. But yeah, Paul McCartney, my favourite Beatle personally. And from watching Get Back as well recently, it blows my mind just how he just comes up with songs on the spot. It's pretty incredible. And you know, he's got loads of brilliant songs. I even appreciate his work that he done with Michael Jackson back in the day. Like Say, that's another great song in my opinion. And even The Girl Is Mine, which was on Thriller, I believe. I really, really enjoy that song. But the top ones are probably Band on the Run, which I've known for years, but I never knew the whole album. So when I listened to that a few years ago, again, stumped me. And Ram, which has Uncle Albert, which is it's silly how good of a song that is. He's a man who knows how to perfectly execute a transition in a song, and that's something that I really appreciate about Paul McCartney. Top 5 now, and this is another one, probably one of the lesser known out of these. Yeah, more modern, but Lucy Rose, and I've made a video talking about Lucy Rose before. Specifically this album and her second to last album, which are called I don't remember. I'll need to put a thing on the title for it, or you can just find the video for it. But Lucy Rose is someone that I discovered in about 2015, 2016, and she was working on her second album, and I was going through all of her singles on YouTube at the time, and she's just always stuck with me ever since then. Again, sort of modern folk / pop, I would say. And she seems to do all of the work on her own when it comes to recording the album. When she tours, it's not the same. But I definitely love to see Lucy live. She seems to be very popular in like Southern America and places like that. She's very popular outside the UK as well. And people adore her, myself included. So I definitely love to see her live. I love her music. She's probably the second least popular out of anybody here, so if you don't know her, give her a try. Let me know what you think. Now we're going into one of the biggest artists of the modern era of music, Bob Dylan. And Bob Dylan, I didn't expect to enjoy quite so much because I care quite a lot about vocals when it comes to musicians. That's why people like Phil Collins stand out to me. That's why people like Even the likes of Lucy Rose, I think, has great vocals. Neil Young, like I've also mentioned, and Björk. They're all great singers. And it's the same for bands, you know. All the bands that I've spoke about in my previous video, they all usually have a fantastic singer. And I think Bob Dylan is great in a non-traditional sense. He doesn't have like a traditional voice, but it's very unique, so he stands out for that. And whenever you get people who make fun of his voice, Billy Joel has a great video like this. I'll need to link that as well so that people can watch it. But he's talking about how when he first found out about Bob Dylan when he was younger, and he thought it was funny how he had the harmonica holder around his neck. And he starts making fun of his voice, and he's just like, well, I mean, it must have been a car accident because he can't sing. And they thought that the harmonica holder was a neck brace. But yeah, phenomenal songwriter. Bob Dylan is. This album is like a very good breakup album. I like a good breakup album. Savlaki is another one of those that I've mentioned in the previous video. But yeah, Highway 61, another fantastic album. And The Freewheeling Bob Dylan is another one that I really enjoy. I think if it wasn't for some of the tail end of that album, it would probably be my favourite Bob Dylan, but this is probably the closest he's going to get for me. If it wasn't for Lily Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts. I know it's got a good story to it, but I find the music of it just to be a bit repetitive, and it goes on for about 9 minutes, and when it's not varied enough, it's just a bit, it just gets a bit old quite quickly. But other than that, it's a spotless album. I still need to listen to things like Blonde on Blonde and Nashville Skyline. I think that's his country album, so I want to get through to some of those as well. But I'm really enjoying Bob Dylan, and again, similar to in the last video, a certain person that was in the honourable mentions that he just shot up recently. Those two are probably, in the last year at least, the other two that have shot up the most, I would say. Them and Simon and Garfunkel. Number 3 is Tim Buckley. Now, I'm going to give an honourable mention here to Jeff Buckley because I've listened to his album Grace, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. He's got the voice of his dad, Mr. Tim. But personally, I just think Tim Buckley has a much more emotional experience personally. The whole thing is very emotional if you listen to both of their catalogues. But specifically Tim Buckley, the first song I heard was on this album, and it's called Once I Was. It's one of his bigger songs, I believe. But if you listen to Song to the Siren, again, he's a folk singer, sort of psychedelic folk from the 60s, sort of early 70s, before he passed away, unfortunately. Like 26 or something he was, so, you know, very, very young. But yeah, it has a very good atmosphere in his music. And it was very much of his own kind, I think. Especially if you listen to an album like Star Sailor, it's a bit mad. Like it's not like easy to digest. It's not like you would. Somebody who listens to Adele, I don't think could just sit and listen to Star Sailor, the album. In my opinion, that's basically what I'm trying to get at. It's not very accessible. But yeah, all of his albums that I've heard, again, I've not heard all of them, but I've heard most of them. I love all of them, and that's why he's so high in this list. So give him a listen as well if you don't know him. Number 2, you need a controversial pick. Not necessarily for the music in my opinion, but more for who he is as a person. Morrissey. This isn't surprising to people who know me, but I really like Morrissey's music. Again, going back to the typical thing that I've said with most of the other artists, great singer. but it's very similar to the style of the Smiths. And the Smiths are obviously one of my favourite bands. And well, this is just a continuation. If you don't have anything of the Smiths, then you may as well continue with Morrissey's catalogue as long as you enjoy that music. And Your Arsenal is my favourite album of his. It's probably the furthest away. It's probably the furthest away from the Smiths type of sound. But all the songs are still wonderful. Viva Hate is very similar to the Smiths sound though, which is his first album. And I've heard that, and again, just excellent. It's not far behind this in my estimation. I've not heard a lot of his more modern stuff, like from 2010 onwards, but I definitely want to just to see what it sounds like. I know his voice has definitely changed since back then, but I really like Morrissey's songwriting style, and his vocal style, of course, because he's pretty unique in that regard. Not in the same way as Bob Dylan, but his enunciations of words and stuff like that, and the way he sort of leaves one line into the other. So yeah, Morrissey number 2. And number 1, again, this probably shouldn't be surprising to most people. And this is one that blew up for me. Pretty much the first time I listened to it. Nick Drake. I could talk about Nick Drake for hours. The whole story of whether he died deliberately or not, because the story goes that he took too many antidepressants, and it's uncertain of whether that was deliberate or not. To me, it's just really sad. Again, Nick Drake was very young when he died. I think I said that Tim Buckley was 26. I think he was 28. I think Nick Drake was 26 when he died. So he wasn't even in the 27 club. And I think it's kind of weird to have a 27 club, like a club for people who died young. It's not really, I don't know. It's sort of sick in its own way. But yeah, Nick Drake is a wonderful songwriter. Again, you're talking acoustic folk music from the tail end of the 60s into the early 70s. It only had 3 proper albums in his lifetime, unfortunately. But I think every single one of them are great. 5 Days Left is my personal favourite because it's got that sort of Baroque side to it, where it's got string arrangements underneath his guitar. And he always worked with a different guitar tuning. So a lot of his songs feel very unique to him. And for any guitarist who's inspired by him, obviously they can work around with that guitar tuning that he used. But 5 Days Left, Brighter Later, and Pink Moon are the only 3 albums he's had. I think Pink Moon is probably the most popular. Again, another wonderful, perfect album in my eyes. Apart from, there's a song called No, I think. And that's probably my least favourite. It's just a bit meh to me. But other than that, not a blemish. Yeah. Thoughts of Mary Jane, Fruit Tree, which is pretty much self-prophetic. I mean, if you listen to the lyrics of that song, it sort of tells a story of his own fucking life, which is pretty mad. But even right down to the album cover for this, I think the album cover really perfectly represents the sound of the album in my head. Because when I hear this, I always imagine him being in like the middle of a forest. You know, and it's like you sort of travel through the forest, you can maybe hear his music in the distance, and the deeper you go, the louder it gets. And I don't know why, his house looks like it's in a cabin in the forest a wee bit in this to me. That's how I imagine it, and, well, the green, or the greenery. But yeah, Nick Drake would be my favourite out of my top 10 artists. And again, same as always, let me know who yours are, your favourite artists, your favourite songwriters, is there anybody that you think I might have missed out? Anybody that you think I should listen to? You know, like I say, open dialogue in the comments. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next video.